Welcome to Two Facet, a podcast about building digital products. Hosted by Matt Mikulski, product manager, and myself, Juncal González, product designer. Join us to listen to our conversations about product development and how each role sees it from their perspective. Let's start. Welcome, listeners. This is episode number 6. And I am Juncal, one of your hosts. And today it's a super warm day in Barcelona. Yeah. And we are recording instead of going to the beach. What do you think about this, Matt?
Yeah. I would go to the beach, but recording podcast is also fun. So yeah, I guess we can do this like 30 minutes break from the beach to record something for our listeners.
Exactly. There's time for everything. So today we have a topic which is user research. That's a topic none of us is a super expert in, but we use it on a daily basis, right?
Yeah. It's, the best way to learn stuff is start doing this stuff and learn mistakes. But none of us is like researcher. Let's go through the episode. I guess we'll explain why we are into the topic and we believe we know something, even though we are not this profile exactly.
Exactly. Well, we use it on a daily basis, and it's tightly related to product design and product management. So maybe we can start with the question, what is research for us?
Yeah. So like from my perspective, it's mainly about product discovery. So I love using research or researchers if I have them, and if not, it's obviously like research techniques to discover the problems and sometimes size them, sometimes understand them better to know where to drive the product further. So it's like a key part for me to set like a vision or parts of strategy for a team.
Yeah, so your perspective is super interesting. So I see you use it to discover where to head, right? Where to go. From my side, from my point of view, as I use it, it's slightly different. So as a designer, I need to be aware all the time that I am solving the problem for someone, for a person that will be using the product. So for me, research is understanding the person who you are designing for, which are their problems, which are their needs, to then be able to define the best solution. So similar but different.
Yeah, totally. And but even on this where to head next stage, it's all about empathizing with the users too and understanding those jobs to be done and their problems to later translate that to sizes, purities, impacts, and all of this business vocabulary. But boils down to you look at all of the requests you have and whatever, and you try to understand, okay, shall I do it? Like, is it really important, and what's better way to do it than talking in some way to your potential users or customers? So
exactly. So then this takes me to the question, when are we using the research, right? Because maybe it's just because we're using it on different moments. When are you using it? So as you said, it's more like when defining the strategy, or?
Yeah, so for me, it's usually first part is the problem worth solving. So sometimes I do, as I said in previous episodes, so I run ads in Google and check it this way. But in like doc planner environment, let's say, so in like bigger company, we need to first understand if the problem that we see from like customer or customers is impactful enough. Meaning, we know what's core of our product and where we are heading. So then you need to be sure or believe in it that the next problem you want to solve is gonna help us. So it's gonna bring the company to whatever levels we want. So And sometimes you will solve a problem for a portion of users, and sometimes you will solve something that will serve to 90% of your users. So you need to know if it's worth solving, and there's no better techniques that research techniques. So you just go to your customers and ask them like, hey, do you like it? Of course you don't do it this way, because this way we all know you shouldn't do it, and this will produce you biased answers. But yeah, it's really crucial to size if the problem is worth solving at first stages.
Yeah, to understand the user, but being able to to see the weight of the problem, right? To evaluate which one to do next.
Yeah, so you have a problem, you talk with few users, and you see that, I don't know, only 2 out of 10 has the problem, and all of them are your core user group. So you may start getting conclusions. Of course, then you should like use some data and try to scale up those results. But you always start from this small group, trying to understand, hey, is it really a problem, or it's just like a one-person problem? It still may be a problem, but it not necessarily mean it's a problem worth solving for you in a given moment.
Good one. From my side, as a designer, I use it during the whole design process as well. But depending on the stage of the design process, I use it differently. Maybe the goals are different or the tools are different. So you can use it at the beginning, at the middle, at the end. At the beginning, it would be exactly what you say. Is the problem worth solving? For me, this already touches design in a way. So I would say this is overlapping part. So in our case, as you mentioned, it's more like the product manager researching if the problem is worth solving. But still, I think it's super valuable that the designer is able to challenge that, or at least understand this. Why is this the problem we are solving?
Super important. Like in every episode we recorded so far, we will probably point it a few times again. Transparency and being able to challenge any decision you get from like top, it's always important to really understand what you're working on.
Yes, because if you're able to challenge it, means you fully understand it, and if you fully understand why you're doing this problem instead of the other one, probably the solution will be better, and you will be probably much more motivated as well in doing so. So that would be the beginning of the design process. But then during the middle, when you're looking for a solution for the problem, or you're ideating things, research is always super useful as well. So you might be checking the process of your user or the user flow, and then depending on that, you can make decisions on what's the solution going to be the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. And yeah, sorry, go.
This is the problem of being like remote, right?
Yeah, remote recording is always fun, but let's see in the future, maybe we'll be able to do it in one place soon. Okay, so you use also research on like the stage on trying to understand how to solve the problem, so observing user flows or benchmarking all of this, and then the end of the process comes, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And in the end, when you want to validate if the solution you delivered is actually solving the problem, and I feel like this overlaps as well a bit the role of the product manager.
Yeah. At the end, we need to validate if whatever we wrote does whatever we hoped to do in like KPIs and other metrics. So yeah, of course. And then here, I guess in your word, you validate more like usability of it, right? Or if it's the right solution.
Yeah, you might, maybe we're validating on different stages. So the designer might be validating sometimes even before release, just to double check this is the right solution, so we don't spend time on developing and releasing something that is wrong. Yeah, and more like usability testing kind of thing, like checking if the user is able to perform the task in a way that it's efficient and that he understands it.
Then you use research in every space between those three stages we also mentioned. Like, so it's like a constant thing. I mean, because by research I don't mean any certain methodology or any certain technique. I mean all of them. Like sometimes you will be using agencies, sometimes you will have researchers on board, sometimes you will be talking to customers, and sometimes you will be just researching competition benchmark products. But you're always in this, or you should, or I hope you would be, in this discovery mode of like, whenever you see customer or behavior or anybody using, you try to discover what's going on. And for me, it's research still. And then you have ton of techniques to structure this data, make actions from it. But you should be always listening.
Yes, so it's always listening and always asking questions as well. So while you're developing the solution, as a designer or developer, a lot of questions come up. Like, okay, so we are developing, I don't know, a functionality for the user to generate a report with the information he has in the software. Okay, but in which moment he is doing that, and what's the format he will need? Will he need a PDF file? Will he need a Word document to change it later? Does he want to send it by email? So there's questions all the time. So yeah, it's all the time trying to be sure that you have answers to these questions with proper data from research.
Yeah, exactly. And do you believe that there are skills we needed or preferable skills to do research by your own, or
Yeah, so I do think there are skills you need, especially in order to gather the information properly and interpret the information properly. So I guess gathering information, like going to an interview with a user, so calling a user and asking him to meet and just have a conversation, that anyone can do. But you really want to not just have a talk, but you need to understand the underlying problem. You need to understand the needs of this person. And for that, you need empathy. And also you need to be aware of your own biases. I mean, it's super difficult to remove your biases completely, but at least to be aware of them and try to reduce them. So by biases, I mean
No, sorry, continue. I will have like a fun example in a minute, but go for it.
Okay. No, just to say what I mean by biases. So our own assumptions we make about the world and the things in life based on our own experience. That's the biases. So if something happens to you one way, you assume this is going to happen like this for everyone, kind of. Yeah, so...
My word. We see it. So part of recruitment process in our company is writing a business cases. So future product managers do write two business cases, two different business cases for us in the process. And then recently we were talking with one of them, and we saw that the person didn't like the first topic. Like, the first topic was not working for that person. What was really nice in it was so because it didn't work, the person added like a lot of biases here and there, and just like didn't thought really through the whole problem and what's possible, what's not, right? So during the interview, what was really nice was when we pointed that, the person was super open and super able to quickly remove those biases. So it's like you need to be aware about them and try to challenge anything you assume with someone else later on. So I would say like so if you're doing notes with someone on like an interview or like research meeting, I do send follow-ups to doctors. And then if I didn't understood something correctly, it takes like 3 minutes for them to point it out back to me. Sometimes it's not nice. Sometimes it's super nice. But you can bounce it back. So it's really nice thing to be open and to understand that you can be super biased, especially for industry you are not like active worker in. I mean, if you're a designer doing product for designers, yeah, that's fine, and you can bet on many stuff. But if you're like a designer doing product for doctors, well, we shouldn't be assuming too much, right? So
exactly, yeah. And we shouldn't be trying to find answers to our own assumptions. This we might be doing unconsciously. So, for instance, in the tools we are designing for the doctor, you might assume a picture you can draw on is gonna be super useful for the doctor. And you might be doing an interview with a doctor, and the questions you might be doing unconsciously, you might be wanting to verify that your thought is
you will
true.
start pitching this idea.
Exactly.
You will start just pitching in 5 seconds. Everybody does that. That's the biggest problem always, especially for product managers. We always have backlogs in our brains. So customer says I have a problem, and it's like just like almost a pain to not say okay, but I have it on purity 5, and it's gonna be like 5 months from now.
Exactly.
So it's totally.
Yeah, like things like, and don't you think it would be amazing to have this solution? And then the person is like, well, yes, why not? And then you're like, tweaking
Of course,
the interview.
Free solutions are always good,
Yeah.
Everybody wants stuff for free. I mean, there is not many users that will call you and tell you, hey, please allow me to remove stuff. It is possible, and it does happen, but it's not the most common scenario, no? The other skill I would say, but this is aside from being aware about the biases, empathy, and finding the underlying problems, I would also say that in like a bigger scale, when you, or even smaller, when you have like specialized role in research, then interpreting big amounts of data and being able to structurize them becomes also super handy. So it's like we're gonna use anyway the doctor examples. So if you talk to 5 different specializations of doctors, all of them gonna have different problems. But at some level of interpretation, a lot of those problems are the same problems using different tools. So let's say they need to input data super fast to have more time for a patient, but they input different types of data. So there may be different ways of input, making it even faster for them. But nevertheless, the underlying problem is just repetitive tasks, right? So, I take the data every day, I input it in this form, and then I read this data 5 weeks later, right? A lot of simplifications here. But you see it only when you start looking at those 5 specializations, and it's gonna be ton of data, ton of interview, and ton of wicked problems from single users. So it may become tricky. So I guess like being able to structurize and put some structure and visualization to huge amount of data can be useful too.
Like being able to extract the patterns from that big amount of data, and also interpret that correctly as well. That's super important. I've seen you doing that.
Thanks God nowadays we have our research. I mean, thanks God now we have our research in a team
that help us interpret the data correctly and stuff. But I've seen you doing that as well before having the research, like taking hundreds of replies from doctors and being able to reduce that into 3-4 things we should improve next. And
it's I'm always trying to do it, but so I do believe it's super important for product managers to be able to do that. So look through hundreds of feedbacks. It's painful, it's sometimes boring, sometimes fun, sometimes super cool. But I do believe it's worth doing, and you need to do it, and you need to be able to extract some level of abstraction from it. Because so maybe not feedbacks, but bugs. Bugs are cool usually. So if in your system some part breaks and it's important part, probably 100 of your users will report that because they will notice that something is broken. And let's say this produces you 100 Jira tickets. So would you try to attack them one by one? Makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
Because like after solving first one, you probably would be done with everything else if it's like a one central blockage. But you can look at it from other perspectives. So you may have complicated system that has a lot of bugs, right? And at first glance, they look not connected to each other. But if you look at them deeper, you start saying that, hey, it's just like we need to fix 3-4 parts in our system. And all of those bugs gonna disappear. It's just there is a root cause for all of them. You know, or you don't. Or I picked the wrong example, but it's about solving bugs. You try to find root causes for bugs, and in terms of feedbacks, you try to find those root causes for those feedbacks. And sometimes, as a product manager, you will be able to do it by yourself. Sometimes you will try to use like a specialized researcher or anything else. To validate if your, again, assumptions, so this extraction from those feedbacks should be validated if this is the right assumption somehow. But yeah, you do it a lot too.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and it helps, like this technique you're talking about or way of working, it helps as well to remove biases, because otherwise if you're just reading through feedbacks, for instance, or checking bugs, you might be unconsciously biased by like, ooh, this one looks super interesting. Let me focus on that one. And then you're like losing the big picture. So yeah, this helps you not lose the big picture. And we're talking about doing research, using research every day, all the time. So shall product designers and product managers do the research? What do you think about that? Because for me,
I do believe they, yeah.
Yeah, go. Tell me.
No. Go. What's no? Go first.
No, I was just gonna say that for that all that we said here, for me, doesn't mean that designers need to generate the data or need to actually do the user research. But for sure, they need to understand what information is needed, in which moment, what questions they want answers for, and what techniques could be used, and what resources you have available to gather this data. Designers can do it, but it's not that they have to do it. I guess it depends on the resources and the scale. So if you're doing something small, designer can do it, but then if you're doing something more strategic or bigger, then I would ask for a researcher. I don't know what you...
Yeah. So, and super similar in product manager role. So, it's like, if you're starting a startup and you have like 10 customers, you're stupid if you don't know their names and you didn't talk to them. It's just being stupid. Like, easy. If you have like 100,000 customers somewhere, it's impossible to know all of them. So, you will never have this opportunity anymore. But I still believe it's super worth having some contact in reality, so talking to your customers. On this scale, I am not so you know, in my case, what I'm doing is every Friday I try to have like an interview with a customer about whatever customer doesn't like or likes in the product, just to talk to some live customer and hear things. And then if someone has some question in mind, I can ask it and I can dig a bit. But for me, it's like super cool. I can find out stuff. I can understand a bit better customers and how they feel with the system. But of course, if we want to dig deeper and understand deeply dentists, I would go for a few interviews. But for the rest, I would organize like specialized person. It's just if you have full focus on it, you're gonna generate much better informations and reports on the other end than someone that's just like calling few doctors here and there. But it's a valid point. Every product manager should be talking to the customers often.
This is a super human-centered approach, right? So even if you have a researcher, or even if you have a team to do research, try to still be in touch all the time with the final user, with the person you are designing for. So then this helps you not lose this human-centered approach. Yeah, like to have all the time the user in your mind as the first thing. Yeah. And in my case, more than interviews, what I do more that researcher wouldn't do would be more like validating my own designs, right? Because the designer who does the design is the one who knows the questions, the things that are not sure about that design, the flows that are not sure, the things that needs to be double checked before developing or before going to live. So in this case, I think that designer might be the best, for that part of the research.
Yeah. The perfect is also, like, I like the setup of, in terms of validation of a solution, like designer doing the validation, because as you said, you know the questions, but having a researcher as a consultant, because you know, thinking in terms of design thinking. So you should be empathizing with the user, right? And in the process of the design, you try to empathize using the data, maybe interviews, maybe something. But then if you have a researcher in a team, you have walking and talking customer advocate, like in a team. So that person is the empathized 100% of her time to do exactly this. So using this as a consultant, I believe it's a good duo. But not necessarily running. So the research shouldn't be validating if the buttons are in the right color or right place, or if the flow makes sense for a user, but can consult you, can help a lot, because, you know, solve those systems and talk to those customers.
Exactly. So maybe some of the questions you might have as a designer, the researcher already has the answers, because maybe they heard it a lot of times in interviews or something like that. So yeah, absolutely true. Yeah. And do you think we should always validate?
We should always validate some way. So no, sure. I believe we should always validate. But how you validate is an open question. So you may validate it way before production. You may call it validation by, hey, we set the KPI and let's see what's gonna happen. You may do guerrilla testing of, like, you know, just launching something and recording users. You can check NPS for like longer terms. So there are validations and validations. So but you should always be checking if something you're producing makes sense on every stage. So, you know, you start with the research to check if there's enough people and do they actually have the problems, and what problems do they have, and understand them. Later you design the solution for them. So if you design something that doesn't work to them, stop it. And you should know at this stage of it will work or not work. There's always a risk, and it's always a bet. But there are ways to, you know, validate some of the things. And then when you're launching, you should always have this feeling of like, I'm launching, but then I should have some success metric to decide if it's a success or a failure. And how can I learn from both? I mean, you should be able to decide this. Otherwise, you can go into this infinite loop of just justifying bad decisions, which may be fun at first, but doesn't drive you anywhere. So, you know.
So you would be validating before launching, like before making the thing live to the users, and then after. So basically all the time, kind of.
Yeah. But again, different techniques, because before launching by validation, I understand everything from sending it to users to checking prototypes to running beta, or, you know, just looking at the benchmark software, saying, hey, we have the same solution, let's just deploy and Jesus take a wheel. I mean, you know, validating it comes back to the first episode. So, you know, when you have a strategy, and I believe everything is strategy also, you need to work on having as low number of risks as possible. So you're de-risking it constantly. So for me, research and validation is just de-risking. So, okay, I'm making this decision of designing. I made the decision. So this is the design. So now I need to validate my decision one way or another. By validate, make myself more comfortable with that decision going further. And then connecting that to research, of course, we can use like usability testing. We can use like ton of tools and techniques. Someday we should invite some researcher that could tell us about like those techniques, no?
Yes, we should, and and a researcher
And
that can give.
Yeah.
No, I say that can give the opinion about this episode.
Yeah,
What?
a review from actual researcher would be super interesting. Yeah, true.
Exactly. So our listeners who are researchers, we will call you.
Yeah. We'll find you.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So, is there anything else that we would like to cover today?
I wanted to say one more thing. So, like, having access to final users, this thing you said, like, being close to them and stuff, in a way, it's a superpower. Because in my working experience, I've had, in the past, work experiences where I wouldn't have access to the final users, maybe because there was, like, different clients in between, and the difference is huge. So how difficult it is to work and to find solutions without having access to final users. So yeah, try to find something, whatever you can have, because it's like a superpower. Yeah,
and all hacking always works. I mean, for sure there are companies hacking is not well perceived, but in some, let's say, more liberal companies, things like writing an email to customer, just like, hey, I'm a designer and you're a customer, can we talk? I need help. Will make work. Like, it will work if it's allowed by your company. If not, maybe we can invent something next time. But I encourage every time to try to talk to customers. They usually are more vocal than you believe.
And there are easy things we can always do, so yeah.
Okay, so
Cool.
Thank you very much for this episode. I enjoyed it a lot, like always. Thank you.
Yes, me too. We should go to the beach
Yeah,
now.
I guess we should. And thank also the listeners for listening to this episode. Hopefully you have beach also like close to your house so you can go there. If not, please enjoy some cold drink for this summer coming. Bye.
Enjoy. Bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to continue the conversation and challenge our thoughts, mention us on Twitter. We are at 2Facet Podcast. If you have any questions you would like us to answer in the next episodes, send us an email to 2facetpodcast@gmail.com. And if this content was useful for you and you would like to support our work, there is a few simple things you can do. Share it with anyone you think may benefit from this content. Subscribe or follow the podcast in the platform where you are listening now. And if you are on Apple Podcast, a rating and a review will be much appreciated. Thank you for listening, and until next time.